Why I create? I create to peek behind the curtain of perceived primordial happenstance, to witness eternal bonds knotted in permanence. I create to allow my finite mind to experience the infinite. For just an instant, different eras long gone, bygones be gone at the crack of dawn, compose the evening when my particle construction chases shadows, third eye, studying alchemy in a Blaise Pascal tuxedo, projective geometry tucked in pockets, break bread with Du Bois and Magneto. Freud can't speak to my dreams as I create ways to consciously free the ego. I create in indigo lawn bottoms beside air vacuums and first causes. Mystic synthesizers captured in a room lit by fleeting embers. Minimalist objectives save for the wormholes on my back wall, spitting riddles from the fourth dimension. When I create, I eat moon pies while contemplating Cambrian explosions, pretending generative linguistics make sense to my fragile comprehension. When I create, singular atoms dance sensually with nurtured acumen. Enigmatic brain functioning embalmed in William Blake etchings. The ghost of Abel haunts Lot and his daughters, causing me to produce sketches of symbolism for forgotten martyrs. And my daughter? I create to recapture the feeling of seeing her footprint under my wife's skin. I create to reimagine the farm in Laogon, retracing steps of lost kin. When I create, I rally misfits, nitwits, pagans, believers, heathens, Gentiles, goys, speak about collective consciousness in laymen. I create to unmask reflective deceits, to analyze veins of leaves, the sun's glare, Ramon's release. When I create, I can make Scooby-Doo analyze neural streams. I create interludes of sacrificial neurons, resurrect lost galaxies, create, then observe in silence. Electrodes, cat synapses, and caustic action. Garveyism promotes schisms and sonar flares. Catch these hands scribbling under ash twilight between ancient African fractions. When I create, hemorrhages of lavender light proceed to paper. Whenever I create, whatever I create, creation is liberation. Peace.
Welcome to Mass Poetry's Evening of Inspired Leaders, our showcase of an all-star roster of luminaries from all different fields, sharing poems that have inspired them. I'm Lisa Mullins, host of WBUR's All Things Considered. Every year, Mass Poetry's Evening of Inspired Leaders acts as a mirror that reflects our times. So this year's speakers will explore the challenges of living and leading during the COVID-19 pandemic, striving towards social justice, tackling global warming, and much more. We have an incredible lineup, so I hope you'll watch the entire event, which clocks in at just under 1 hour. It's Mass Poetry's goal to raise $100,000 to support its free and low-cost programs. There are many of them, including poetry residencies in schools, programs at the Center for Creative Writing, and the Mass Poetry Festival. Please support these programs at masspoetry.org. Before we go any further, I'd like to offer a land acknowledgement. Mass Poetry and Boston, Massachusetts are on the ancestral land of the Massachusetts, Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and Agawam peoples. Many indigenous communities have moved through this land over hundreds of years, and many indigenous people work and live here today. We honor these ancestral grounds and support the resilience and strength that indigenous people have shown around the world. I'd like to note that what you're about to see is a digital reprise of the live event that we held on November 18th, 2021 at Grove Street Center for Creative Writing. That's where Mass Poetry is serving as an arts partner in residence. It was a wonderful evening with an audience of 50 people, but our production partner unfortunately experienced technical problems with the live stream of the event, and that made it tough for our hundreds of online guests to watch the presentation in its entirety. We regret that, but hope you'll sit back and enjoy take 2 of this year's event. I want to note that Boston's Youth Poet Laureate Alondra Bobadilla also appeared live on stage at the Center for Creative Writing. We regret, though, that you won't see her in this video. Now, please enjoy this year's Evening of Inspired Leaders, brought to you by Mass Poetry.
Hello, my name is Eve Bridberg. I am the founder and executive director of Grub Street, and I am coming to you live from my kitchen dining room to try and recreate, and I put on my party dress because I love mass poetry so much, and I wanted to try and recreate some of the fun and delight of the evening we had in celebration of their work. So I'm here to read my remarks from that evening, and also a wonderful poem by Ada Limon. It is an honor and delight to read from Grub Street's new stage tonight. It's thrilling to be here in support of our dear friends and partners at Mass Poetry. I look forward to the wonderful programming they will be curating from this stage and throughout the space and beyond in the coming months and years. I look forward to getting into some good trouble with them as we partner and collaborate. As many of you know, this is one of our very first events in this space. And I have to say, through the uncertainty and disruption of COVID, it was reassuring and steadying to watch this stage being built, the bookshelves going up, and the space coming together in anticipation of nights just like this one. Tonight, as I said, I'm reading a poem by Ada Limon. It's from her collection, The Carrying, which I purchased right here at Porter Square Books, Seaport Edition. In an interview on PBS, she said something which perfectly captures the promise of this new space. She said, "I believe people are reading more poetry because we distrust the diatribe, the easy answer, the argument that holds only one note. Poetry makes its music from specificity and empathy. It speaks to the whole complex notion of what it means to be human. And this is exactly what we need more of these days, a chance to be fully seen in both our rage and our humanity." I've chosen her poem, Dead Stars. Mass Poetry told me that the theme tonight is rebirth and recovery, but I'm going to be honest, I'm not feeling much rebirth or recovery as this global pandemic hangs on, as I enter the 20th month of leading an organization from this spot right here, primarily. It's easy these days, and I see this reflected all around me as people struggle with delays, shortages, systems failures, not to mention the rise of white nationalism, political instability, and the list can go on. It's hard. It's not hard to feel beaten down, and it is hard to remember our human capacity to imagine and dream about other possible worlds and realities, and then to work toward them. Dead Stars feels like a perfect poem for this mood and this moment because it reminds us that actually what we need is carried inside of us and that we can glimpse its spectacular shape even as we do something as mundane as taking out the recycling or the trash. So here we go. Dead Stars by Ada Limon. Out here, there's a bowing even the trees are doing. Winter's icy hand at the back of all of us. Black bark, slick yellow leaves, a kind of stillness that feels so mute it's almost in another year. I am a hearth of spiders these days, a nest of trying. We point out the stars that make Orion as we take out the trash. The rolling containers a song of suburban thunder. It's almost romantic as we adjust the waxy blue recycling bin until you say, man, we should really learn some new constellations. And it's true. We keep forgetting about Antlia, Centaurus, Draco, Lacerta, Hydra, Lyra, Lynx. But mostly, we're forgetting we're dead stars too. My mouth is full of dust, and I wish to reclaim the rising, to lean in the spotlight of streetlight with you toward what's larger within us, toward how we were born. Look, we are not unspectacular things. We've come this far, survived this much. What would happen if we decided to survive more, to love harder? What if we stood up with our synapses and flesh and said no to the rising tides? Stood for the many mute mouths of the sea, of the land. What would happen if we used our bodies to bargain for the safety of others, for Earth? If we declared a clean night, if we stopped being terrified, if we launched our demands into the sky, made ourselves so big people could point to us with the arrows they make in their minds, rolling their trash bins out after all of this is over. Thank you.
I hear America singing, the varied carols I hear, each singing what belongs to him or her and none else.
I, too, sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh, eat well, and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America.
You could reach into my voice box and pull out a fistful of ammunition. You could reach into my larynx and pull out a dead canary, X's for eyes. I'm disentangling the vocal cords that got knotted in the windstorm. I'm stringing them up against the sky like chimes.
Although she gives me bread of bitterness and sinks into my throat her tiger's tooth, stealing my breath of life, I will confess I love the sculptured hell that tests my youth.
I live on a street where trees have faces, where birds bebop outside of my window, announcing fresh days, and the leaves whisper our names.
I was the pause during the attendance sheet reading, the stumble after a long list of Anglo-Saxon names, and I made the lives of substitute teachers so difficult. My letters in foreign arrangement were a problem solved by process of elimination. The assumption was that this was me, but my name was never read aloud.
I live on a street with rotating doors like passports to other countries, the sights and smells, music to my ears.
Do you wish they'd stop telling you to write around what goes through you? Wish your voice as strong and dismissive as your mama's swollen laugh? Do you cry often in this city? Do you cry at the noise of young girls swinging their lamplit lives against the sway of train cars, stringing their voices inside you? Do you cry because there are those who want to bury these breaths, smother these names, this anger, this pain, call it defensive, non-compliant, threatening? Do you cry at the sight of other Black women with their hands up?
All of them in iterations and iterations, detached from time and space in strange permutations. Women holding hands with themselves a generation younger. My father, the same age as his mother, with her head on his shoulder. And the girls, my God, the girls I've loved and wanted to, chatting with one another.
Such a sweet dream. I dreamed I was having a conversation with the great poets, Manuel Bandeira and Carlos Drummond de Andrade. I was born tired, hungry, and cold, I said. And Drummond answered, I too.
None of us living under yarmulke, crescent, or cross can cop the science of what happens behind the final curtain coming down. But for now, be a piece of work. Noble your reason, infinite your faculty, angel your action, and learn to apprehend like a god. For we are at times the masters of our own fate, though it seems we're under heaven's spell. But both fault and deliverance are not in our stars. but somewhere deep in ourselves.
Hello, I'm Beena Venkatraman, and I'm the Boston Globe's editorial page editor. It's my honor to share with you the poem that I read for Mass Poetry's Evening of Inspired Leaders. Poetry to me, in a world of 24/7 news cycles and endless streams of information, is an opportunity to slow ourselves down, to take a moment to focus on an image, a turn of phrase, a juxtaposition that might actually reveal a deeper truth to us than the truths we know so well on the surface of our observation and our existence. The poem I'm choosing to read is Blessing the Boats by Lucille Clifton. May the tide that is entering even now, the lip of our understanding, carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind, then turn from it, certain it will love your back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever. And may you in your innocence sail through this to that. Thank you so much for the opportunity to honor poetry, to acknowledge the work of an extraordinary organization, Mass Poetry, and to share with you this benediction, really, at a time when I think we need so much more compassion, and we are all undergoing incredible change and on a changing planet, and need the sense of moving through, of sailing through with less resistance. Thank you so much.
I'm glad to be able to join you this evening, even if only virtually. The poem I will read was written by Kiowa poet N. Scott Momaday, chosen because it so stunningly captured a moment in time of the COVID pandemic. In the time of plague, we keep indoors. When we dare to venture out, we are cautious. Our neighbors smile, but in their eyes there is reserve and suspicion. They keep their distance, as we do ours, in mute accord. Much of our fear is unspoken, for there is at last the weight of custom, the tender of rote consolation. We endure thoughts of demise and measure the distance of death. Death, too, wears a mask. But consider, there may well be good in our misfortune if we can find it. It is hidden in the darkness of our fear. But discover it and see that it is hope and more. It is the gift of opportunity. We have the chance to prevail, to pose a resolution for world renewal. We can be better than we have ever been. We can improve the human condition. We can imagine, then strive to realize our potential for goodness and morality. We can overcome pestilence, war, and poverty. We can preserve our sacred purpose. We can determine who we are in our essential nature and who we can be. We are committed to this end for our own sake and for the sake of those who will come after us. There is a better future and we can secure it. Let us take up the task and let us be worthy of our best destiny. This poem was first published in the New York Times in May 2020, relatively early in this pandemic, a pandemic which has now stretched for a long 20 months. I imagine we can all remember where we were that dark spring, so bright outside and so dark within, keeping indoors when possible, certainly keeping our distance from others, looking for ways to raise the spirits of others while living with so much fear of the unknown. I was working on the front lines alongside my colleagues at Massachusetts General Hospital, treating patients with COVID-19, seeing the devastation firsthand. As I walked to work, I saw the horror of a refrigerator truck parked out front, serving as expanded capacity for our morgues in the height of the surge. It represented darkness even before we went inside. Our hope for a better future kept us going. Our giving to others brought us overwhelming returns, and that is certainly what drives my work at CDC every day, responding to the pandemic, encouraging vaccination, and fighting for health equity. As the poem suggests, we can find strength in our pain, we can learn from this moment, renew our sense of responsibility to others, and work towards a more equitable world for all. I believe poetry is a vital art form that helps nourish and sustain us throughout our lives. Thank you for inspiring us to remember its power to unite and to heal.
Hello, my name is Stéphane Bancel. I'm very thankful to have a chance to read you this poem today. Growing up in France, poetry and literature has been very important to me and my education. And during the last 20 months with COVID, it has not always been easy. The team has worked 7 days a week, trying to help as many humans as we could. And so this poem has been a source of inspiration and tranquility for me, and I'm delighted to be able to share it with you today. Desiderata, words for life. Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others. Even the dull and the ignorance, they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexatious to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain and bitter. For always, there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals. And everywhere, life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love. For in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is a perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strengths of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune. But do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of a universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive Him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations, in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all of its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful, strive to be happy.
I would like to start off with a poem that a friend sent me not too long ago. It's a poem that Maya Angelou referenced at the funeral of jazz great Max Roach, and it brings me solace as I think of some of the pillars of my life who have died in the past few years: Ken, Nancy, and David. I hope as you listen, you will hold up the memory of anyone that you have lost and maybe find some solace as well. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms. Slowly and always irregularly, spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed, they existed. We can be and be better, for they existed.
Hello, my name is Wesley Stace. I'm coming to you from my library in Philadelphia. And I'm very pleased to be asked to be at the Evening of Inspired Leaders. I wish I could sing you some Inspired Leader, but I'm just going to sing you one of my own songs instead. My lockdown activity was, I made an album and put it out in September. But a year before that, if not a year and a half, I put out this book of poems called Late Style, which is the name of the album. And so certain was I as to which 12 songs would be on the album. And so I'm going to sing you one of them. This song's about a bit of an uninspired leader, actually, partly about that. And this song is called Come Back Yesterday. Thank you. Oh, you're such a bad winner, baby. It must be beginner's luck. I don't know how, but you got it done. I guess you're a lucky duck. So wave your medal upon the podium and then please go away. Oh, come back yesterday. You've got the balls for a struggle, baby, but you don't have the stomach for love. You want it all to be all about you, and even that isn't enough. So eat your words and delete your account, you're old and in the way. Oh, come back yesterday. Way back before Hitler, baby, I think we were warned of it. How the man who believes in nothing at all wears any clothes that fit. And they'll cover up every crime they commit to delay the moment they come back yesterday. Your clothes will be way back in style like your views, and women in kitchens, or maybe as muses, and old worlds to conquer, and slaves with the blues, and ask but don't tell, except when you're cruising, and problems you cause you can blame on the Jews. It's better for everyone. The kids round here have got wide open minds, they're more empathetic than you. But even the cutest cannot relate to your antediluvian views. Your monument will be your grave in the epic epitaph will say, oh, oh, come back yesterday. It's better for everyone, perhaps the solution suits you too, since you just want to turn back time. Get nobody smart wants to live in the past or go back to primordial slime. And soon you'll be gone, so please move along. Tomorrow just called to say, oh, oh, come back yesterday. Thank you very much. I hope you're having a lovely evening.
Thank you for including me in this wonderful event. It gives me an opportunity to reflect on the single most important question of humanity, the meaning of life. The 11th century Persian poet Omar Khayyam, who despite being Muslim struggled with the concept of an afterlife, he postulated that regardless of what lies ahead, being good was the essence. Folks of a surly tapster tell, and daub his visage with the smoke of hell. They talk of some strict testing for us. Pish, he's a good fellow, and twall will be well. Whether we come to good by religion, logic, or intuition, for Emily Dickinson, there was another concept that was a critical partner. 800 years later, she wrote, "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest is the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that keeps so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it ask a crumb of me." Hope is the thing that carries us through the hardships and asks next to nothing of us. Though, as we say in business, hope is not a strategy, it is an essential element of life, especially today as our planet faces an existential crisis. Hope motivates us for the good fight. Yet for Ogden Nash, hope is insufficient if we forget who we are. In keeping with Emily Dickinson's theme of sea and bird, 100 years later, Nash wrote, "Hark to the sky of a seagull. He cries because he's not an eagle. Oh, what if you were, you silly he-gull? What would you say to your she-gull?" They are costs to losing our identity, and in this case, potentially the seagull's mate. In today's world, as we race ahead in the name of progress, let us remember who we are. We are of modest beginnings, and we will all soon return to the earth. So let's leave it a better place than we found it. And there you have it, my friends, 3 powerful lessons from poets of our past and how to live our lives. Be good, be hopeful, be yourself. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Daniel Johnson, Mass Poetry's Executive Director. Thank you so very much for joining us. I'd like to dedicate my remarks to my sister, Sarah Elizabeth Johnson. Sally, as we called her, died almost 11 months ago to the day. My big sis with a satiny voice and Lake Superior blue eyes. Sally struggled with anorexia for more than 2 decades. While she didn't die of COVID-19, her death a week before Christmas was one hastened by weeks and months of grinding isolation. A deeply spiritual person and a gifted writer, Sally loved poetry, and she loved the work of mass poetry. She often peppered the people she loved with poems and prayers, whether Rilke or St. Augustine. In our final days with Sally, she shared these lines by Rumi with me and my brother Mark to comfort us. Goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes, because for those who love with heart and soul, there's no such thing as separation. As I mourn, as I heal, as I lead, as I write, I vow to keep Sally's memory close, burning like a lantern over ice. At this moment, so many of us are grieving, shaken, whether we've lost loved ones, jobs, or homes, our collective sense of safety and stability has shattered. Understanding this, Mass Poetry launched its Hard Work of Hope series in spring 2020. It draws inspiration from Kathy Aguirre's poem reading, I bow my head to the hard work of hope. I let it place its dull and heavy hand upon my neck. I submit to its dour blessing. I give up. I begin its thankless, necessary pilgrimage. In the past 18 months, Mass Poetry has published more than 100 Hard Work of Hope poems exploring themes of anger, justice, resilience, and yes, hope. Again and again, our community of poets has reached for the words to describe the indescribable. More than 750,000 U.S. COVID-19 deaths, the killings of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and countless others, the plight of Haitian migrants abroad and at the U.S. border. Mass Poetry understands that words and stories catalyze connection and understanding, even healing. Writing, I've learned, is a way of slicing free of silence. I learned this while penning elegies for the late American journalist James Foley, my close friend who was killed by ISIS in Syria. I saw it firsthand while teaching poetry to terminally ill pediatric patients in Chicago who found new hope, even a fighting optimism in their final days. I'm struck by the penetrating symbolism of opening a new literary arts center in the midst of a global pandemic. It's a beautifully, recklessly regenerative act, a healing democratic gesture. Another way of saying, in the words of poet Agha Shahed Ali, the world is full of paper. Write to me. I'd like to congratulate Eve Bridberg, Grub Street's founder and executive director, on this incredible accomplishment. I'd like to thank Grub Street for inviting Mass Poetry to serve as an arts partner in residence in this new literary hub, also home to Bob Porter Square Books, the Boston edition. During the pandemic, Mass Poetry finished a new strategic plan. It calls for us to double down, placing poets in residence in underserved schools. Just across the harbor, for example, we placed poet Anthony Fibo in residence at the Mario Umana Academy, where he's leading workshops in English and Spanish. Poetry helps you unswallow your thoughts and unfold your feelings, is how a 7th grader from Chelsea described what we do. Mass Poetry will use the literary stage at the Center for Creative Writing to curate monthly events, including a citywide teen open mic and workshop series, monthly book launches by Massachusetts poets, and more. We'll expand our community residencies to partners like the St. Francis House, a shelter for women on Boston Common. We'll stencil poems by recovering addicts on sidewalks in collaboration with the Mayor's Office of Addiction and Recovery. And we'll tie in programs from Massachusetts Poetry Festival, such as Crossing Dimensions with Indigenous Poets. We now host the Massachusetts Poetry Festival, New England's largest, every 2 years in Salem. I'll close by remembering my sister Sally one more time. Before I could ever dare it myself, Sally loved to introduce me saying, "This is my brother Daniel. He's a poet." In a sense, Sally wished me into becoming who I am. In a similar vein, Mass Poetry is committed to building a diverse, inclusive community that lifts all voices. Please help us raise $100,000 to help us write our future in this glorious new home built of books, words, and letters. Thank you.
Praise be to the Most High. Blessings reign over my life. even when evil arise, angels expose their disguise. Oh. I write because it's not a coincidence that the privilege to read and write was strategically stripped from Black humans to help us forget and manifest less. And oh, did they manifest death. Written by our legislature as the foundation of our anthems, supported by our Bibles, snuck into our curriculums, manipulating our historical references, and poisoning our entertainment. Are you not entertained yet? I write because there's a lot of curse to reverse. And someone knew that the power of the universe lies in our words, so I write. This is how I fight. This is my war cry. I teach because committing to sharing information is an aggressive accountability to never stop growing. And I'm an all or nothing kind of woman. Because when I was growing up, I was impatient with mommy for not being able to help me study like she didn't do enough. Like she didn't leave her country with an 8th grade education so I could stamp my passport and speak fluent English in countries that will accommodate my cultural ignorance for the American currency in my pocket. I teach because I want to be better than I was. For the mothers who don't feel smarter than a 5th grader, but have mastered the science of being a homemaker, you are everything we need. This is how I fight. This is my war cry. I rest because mommy still doesn't know how. Even on days that her body gives her no choice, she's mentally and physically programmed to always be moving around. When I take a little longer to get up from the bed in the morning, I pray that she can feel it through. That somehow I can slowly undo the muscle memory created by her sacrifices too. I rest because it's healing. I wish so deeply that we may rest in peace while we're still breathing. I sing because even in humans with Alzheimer's and dementia, music is the last information to leave the memory. The words in a hymn are meant to serve as directory, and oh, do they direct. From the tribes in West Africa, through the slave ships at sea, to the sugarcane fields in the Caribbean and the underground railroads pushing steam, through every single colonizer's dreams, I sing. Because it was the hymns that helped us remember, to make sure that we never forget. And if I don't sing, I might just scream instead. Well, yeah, 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 yeah. Well, yeah.
For years, Mass Poetry has led young people to write and engage with poetry, helped them to creatively explore their deepest minds and find the words and courage to express their highest ideals. For more than a decade, Mass Poetry has aimed to nurture our young people to find their words, to fire up their imaginations, and also find their courage to say what needs saying.
Hello, my name is Andrew Basevich. I'm standing in front of the Bird Fountain, just off the town common in Walpole, Massachusetts. Donated by the locally prominent Bird family, the fountain was defunct when my own family moved here some time ago. When my son was killed in Iraq in 2007, the town raised money to repair the fountain in his memory. I thought it would make a good backdrop for my reading of a poem called On a Soldier Fallen in the Philippines, written by William Vaughn Moody. The poem dates from around the turn of the 20th century. In 1898, America had gone to war with Spain, ostensibly to liberate Cuba. In the course of the brief conflict that followed, the United States seized various territories to include Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and most significantly, the Philippine archipelago, consisting of over 7,600 islands, thousands of miles west of San Francisco. When the United States proceeded to annex the Philippines, Filipinos launched a war of national liberation to oust the American occupiers, not all that different from the resistance that U.S. forces faced more recently in Iraq and Afghanistan. The resulting conflict was very ugly and gave rise to a vigorous anti-war movement at home, led by prominent individuals such as the writer Mark Twain and the social reformer Jane Addams. That the United States should be employing violence in pursuit of imperial ambitions was simply wrong in their view. Moody's poem is a product of that moment. As literature, it may strike us today as old-fashioned, but to my mind, it speaks directly to our present moment. Here's how it goes. On a soldier fallen in the Philippines. Streets of the roaring town, hush for him. Hush, be still. He comes who was stricken down doing the word of our will. Hush, let him have his state. Give him his soldier's crown. The grists of trade can wait, they're grinding at the mill. But he cannot wait for his honor. Now the trumpet has been blown. Wreathe pride now for his granite brow, lay love on his breast of stone. Toll, let the great bells toll, till the clashing air is dim. Did we wrong this parted soul? We will make it up to him. Toll, let him never guess what work we sent him to. Laurel, laurel, yes, he did what we bade him do. Praise and never a whispered hint, but the fight he fought was good. Never a word that the blood on his sword was his country's own heart's blood. A flag for a soldier's buyer who dies that his land may live. Oh, banners, banners here, that he doubt not nor misgive, that he heed not from the tomb. The evil days draw near when the nation, robed in gloom, with its faithless past shall strive. Let him never dream that his bullet scream went wide of its island mark, home to the heart of his darling land, where she stumbled and sinned in the dark. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Umeleni Mhlaba Adebo. I am a new member of Mass Poetry Board, and I am so thrilled and honored to have this space. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, whether that's been in the comfort of your own home or here live with us at the Center for Creative Writing. One of the reasons I am so honored to be part of Mass Poetry is that I have been literally writing poetry for as long as I can remember. My mother was a librarian by trade, and I literally grew up in libraries reading books, and I have always loved the power of words, how poetry can distill life. And it is also a wonderful experience to be not only Massachusetts born, but also that I published my first book of poetry here in Massachusetts really makes it a special honor. And I'm thrilled to be able to work alongside all of you and Mass Poetry to make sure that poetry is accessible in every space and in every place. I also want to spend a few minutes saying congratulations, especially to Grub Street on this accomplishment, on creating this space for us all, as well as Porter Square Books Boston edition for their recent grand opening. A warm thank you to all our speakers this evening and to our wonderful MC, WBUR's Lisa Mullins. Thank you as well to our following event sponsors: the Boger Family Foundation, Nutter, McLennan and Fish, which also serves as Mass Poetry's pro bono legal counsel, Antioch University's MFA program, Brookline Booksmith, and Harvard University Bookstore. A special shout out to all our host committee members, including Jim and Karen and Sarah, Michael and Sarah and Barney Arnold, Kevin and Ellen Whalen, Greg Lestage, Hank Philippi Ryan, Brendan and Heather Coughlin. I applaud Mass Poetry's board, staff, poets and volunteers. And lastly, I'd like to thank the capable team at Terry Hanley Audio for helping to make this event as seamless as possible, recognizing that there were some challenges this evening, but we did the best that we can, and we hope that you are able to enjoy this wonderful experience for you. We thank you for your patience, for your attention, and for bringing us into your homes and into your hearts. Thank you to each and every one of you, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season and that poems continue to lift you, to inspire you. Good night.